Good afternoon. On the occasion of World Heritage Day, we extend our warm greetings and best wishes to all. The day serves as the meaningful reminder of the rich cultural and historical legacy we have inherited and shared responsibility we hold in preserving it for future generations. It is our pleasure to welcome you all to the Future of Heritage, Past Forward, hosted at the National Gallery of Modern Art, Bengaluru, in collaboration with Heritage Beku. This gathering brings together diverse voices to reflect on how the past continues to inform and shape our present and future. As we begin today's program, we invite you to engage, reflect, and reimagine the role of heritage in rapidly changing world. May this occasion inspire thoughtful dialogue and a renewed commitment towards safeguarding our shared heritage. We now welcome Priya Chetty Rajgopal, co-founder of Heritage Beku, to kindly introduce today's event and set the context. Please join me in welcoming Priya Chetty ji.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to see you all here, and it's wonderful to be here on World Heritage Day. So a warm welcome. I know this is a lovely space, but isn't the air conditioning just fantastic? It is such a hot day. When I came in, I said, oh my God, this is heaven. Now, this is the most inappropriate introduction to Heritage Day, but it's the present, it's the here, it's the now. I just want to sort of go through our flow for the day. But more importantly, I want to be able to say how grateful we are that we can celebrate something like Heritage Day. We have celebrated it every year with different things. And it's something that reminds us that center stage, that's something that should be where it is and be built on. This was, I think, set up by UN many, many years ago, and by UNESCO, actually. And it remains, and we take it forward. So I want to talk a little bit about Heritage Beku before we start the panel. So I'm just giving an overview and context. I also want to share that we, today, because the Chief Justice is visiting, we are going to have perhaps one of our panelists not being able to make it. And also the Chief Secretary, Shalini Rajneesh, was supposed to be here, in fact, doing this session that I'm doing now. But they will all be held up because the Supreme Court Chief Justice is here. And we will miss them, but the show will go on regardless. So the Heritage Beku piece, which we all take so seriously, we worry about so much. When we look around, for example, at this beautiful venue, the Manik Velu Mansion, we aren't just looking at bricks and mortar, we're looking at a story. All of us have been through different avatars of this place if we were growing up here in Bangalore. And we, I think, are here right now to make sure that the story, this is one of the stories of Bangalore, this story does not get erased. So 8 years ago, to give you a brief history, Heritage Beku began with a simple, visceral thought. Bangalore is growing at a pace that is breathtaking, certainly, but it's also eroding at a pace which is heartbreaking. There were a few of us sitting around a table 8 years ago, and I think Prakash would remember, Naresh was there, Ravi Chandar, and I think Deepthi, and we were actually groaning and moaning about what we need, what the city needs. This was post the Steel Flyover Beta movement, where we saw the impact of citizens on the city. And Prakash came up with a name, and he says, I think we should, and we should call it Heritage Beku. And so it stayed. So thanks, Prakash, for that name 8 years ago, which has stood the test of time. And it also started because we realized how easy it was to give up heritage. Are you able to hear me? Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Krumbigal Hall fell in an instant. It did not fall because there was intention or villainy, because it was just assumed that we could build something better. And the value of heritage at that point was never underlined more to all of us than that morning when we saw the bulldozer going over Krumbigal Hall. And that, I think, was the origin of Heritage Beku. It was a lady called Alia Krumbigal, who is the great-granddaughter of Krumbigal himself, and she was a very strong part of this and continues to be Sometimes I feel she's more of a citizen of Bangalore than many of us are. So all of this was the origin. And we realized at that point, if we didn't act, the city of gardens and the cradle of culture that we talk about so much is going to become nameless city skyscrapers. And that is something we really don't want. But do we want to protest? No, we want to partner. We want to create a future where heritage isn't past tense, if you forgive me for being very cliched, but a past perfect one. Now the model that we used, and it sounds great from hindsight, but there is a lot of seat of the pants, responsive, transactional things that we also do. The model that makes Heritage Beku unique is not just what we do, but who we are. We operate primarily on a citizen-first advocacy model. So many times in cities, heritage is left to the experts. Ivory towers, academia, and that's completely okay. But we felt, especially being very strong, involved citizens, that heritage belonged to the people. And that's what we should push for, and we didn't go it alone. We built, I think, what we like to call a bevy of heavyweights. We have former chief secretaries and ambassadors who understand the levers of power. We have urban planners and architects who see the built environment. We also have artists, writers, cultural practitioners who feel the cultural pulse, and professors, thinkers, policymakers who provide academic rigor. So this is the citizen group that we kind of run with. And we are not just a hobby, though I wish sometimes we were a bit more focused. We've all got so much to do in our individual lives. But it's a multidisciplinary task force in some ways. Many of us here who have been part of the redoing or making the plans again for the revised master plan would know how many hours, it was 700 hours, man-hours that we spent in moving up the needle as far as the revised master plan 31 was concerned. But, that went another way. But that was the kind of investment we made by creating a multidisciplinary task force. And we sat right across here, sitting and working on it over days and days, and finally presented our impact. So while we speak to government, we aren't just bringing passion. We are bringing data, we're bringing policy alternatives, and we're also bringing a collective vision. We move on to some of the other stuff that we do, which is the strategy, which is we're looking at information, we're looking at education, we're looking at empowerment. And the three-pillared strategy that we've sort of follow are information and education, which sounds very big, but basically it just is informing and experiencing, some of which you will see here. And the information and education follows something that we all are very passionate about at Heritage Beku, which is we simply cannot save what we don't know. If you don't know something is crumbling, you won't even step up 1 centimeter to do something about it because you just didn't know. And that is the reality of it. Today is very different. We spend a fair amount of time researching the depth of heritage, not just the grand palaces, but the natural heritage, our ancient trees. We look at our cultural heritage, which is our languages and festivals, and the built heritage, including small bazaars and bungalows. We try looking at the micro as well. And the engagement is the second pillar that we have, which is the fun part, right? We have walks, we have the talks, we have all sorts of interesting events that we plan. We did a Romali art walk last month, and we're doing one every month. And we want to bring people into a space. We want them to touch the stone, hear the stories. And the third pillar that we have is policy and advocacy. We operate primarily, if you forgive the use of the word, in an open architecture model. We don't work in a silo. We work with academia, think tanks, other NGOs. Crucially, we work with the government. We have MOUs with various academia and departments of architecture, Department of Archaeology and Heritage, NGMA itself, Designers Institute, many others that can actually cross-pollinate, have value. What we see, and I'm going to end with a little bit of this, is we've not just done this over a period of years and said, okay, that's all very good. We've run several campaigns. And one of these days I'm going to write about the campaign that we ran called Kill Bill, which was very transformational, but very quietly done. And that's something which deserves a little bit of a cover. Whether it's the fight for Cubbon Park, and we are so happy to see our DD for Cubbon Park here as well, we have always put natural heritage at the top of our list, because that's something that erodes so quickly. Whether it's a preservation of Janta Bazaar or the biodiversity of the cantonment trees recently, we've been at the forefront, whether it's news, we have really been acting as a city's conscience. Living heritage is something that's equally important. And I think what is most recent and most beloved for all of us is the revival of the Cubbon Park Bandstand, for which we should say thank you to Kusuma, who is the DD of Cubbon Park and has been so supportive. We finish, I think, our 70th performance tomorrow. And we've started it in November 24, and except for one day when Manmohan Singh sadly passed away and it was closed, but we have had a performance every single Sunday. So after a 10-year gap, Cubbon Park Bandstand is singing and dancing again. And it is something which is utterly beautiful. If you come in and you've participated in some of the, you will see so much of the joy that people feel of having culture back in the bandstand. And one of the things that comes across clearly is that, people care. They do want to make a difference, but you need to have a platform that allows people to care. And I think some ways that's what we're trying to do. Now, to know, to love, to save is something that is our core ethos in Cubbon Park. You cannot save. I say this 100 times, I feel it with every fiber of my being. You cannot save what you do not know. I mean, you cannot save what you do not love, and you cannot love what you do not know. And this, I think, is just our base of why we do what we do. We want you, at this point, to know Bangalore. We want you to know its hidden corners, its textiles, its trees. Once you know it, you will love it. I mean, that's just the way it is. And once you love it, you will fight for it. You will save it. You will see today our installation chart. Mason's Inc. has been kind enough to give us a very interactive way of looking through Bangalore, its fading memories, what we can, and interact with it in terms of, whether it's brain or brawn. You walk through it, I think you'll have yourself a good time. Our panel discussion is on the future of heritage, something that we really need to focus on, if not today, then when, on World Heritage Day. And we're very happy that we have Pavitra Mudayya and we have Prasad Bidapa, who are going to take us through a fun fashion show showcasing the heritage textiles of Karnataka. And after that, the installations are available. I would like very much for you to walk back and look at. So we are not here just looking back, right? We are looking at moving the past forward. So thank you so much for being part of the journey. And we really do want to celebrate the soul of Bangalore together. I'm going to go back to that one line which I want you to hold with you, which is really that you cannot save what you do not love, and you cannot love what you do not know. Please, with all of us, invest in knowing a little bit more about your city. And you see the city coming alive. So many things are happening. Let us fall in love a little bit. NGMA allows us to do it. When you come in here, there are 100 ways we get engaged with the beauty and the age and the past and the history of this beautiful place. So that's it from my side. And while we have an interesting set, as I said, we have our panel discussion now, and then we have the, I don't know whether I can call it a fashion show, but I would love to look at it as being a leg dem where we have these wonderful models, and we have Prasad and his team here to be able to sort of give us an insight as to how we should preserve these textiles and how we should make sure they're part of our daily life. So I'm going to end with that and look at starting off the panel discussion. So I'm going to request our panelists to come on the stage, if I may. And really, no introduction is really so right, but let me start with Ramji. We have Ramji Chandran, who, if anyone is on Instagram, would know inside out as being the person who's been talking so emphatically and so passionately about the history of Bangalore. So while he's just completed the history of Bangalore, the book, if I'm not mistaken, that's almost through. Yeah, so that examines the city's origins through the trade, urbanization, prehistory, colonial times, and the podcast, which we all love to watch. I remember Ramji from way back, from Bangalore This Fortnight, Bangalore Bangalore Month. These were magazines that showcased Bangalore in the best possible way in terms of how you could live Bangalore. And he's also launched his novel last year, which was No Reason at All. And he's a very, very good jazz musician, and I'm very happy to see Radha Thomas here today as well. Sometime we'll get her to perform for us. So Ramji, may I just request you to come on the stage? And yes, can we have a round of applause for... And also I must tell you that I've been chasing him forever and requesting him to come in and do a program with us, but it is what it is. We have him now, and that's it. Prakash is special. Prakash Belawadi is such a familiar face to all of us. And I think Bangalore rings really, really loud and really strong in his soul. Prakash and I go back several years, but we were part of something very interesting called the Steel Flyover Beda movement many, many years ago. And we co-founded Heritage Beku as well. But his voice for the city is an authentic voice. It's a real voice. And while we have enjoyed, he's an engineer from UVC, old Bangalore boy. He has been a journalist for many years. He is a theatre person. He's an actor and a script writer. He's done enough and more things in the space of the arts, and he's a little think tank all by himself. So he's my go-to when I need to find the instinct for something. And as I said, we owe Heritage Beku as a name. We owe that to Prakash. And in the last few years, the kind of work that has been put in, I don't know whether anybody's seen Humble Politician Nagraju, but I love that film. That was just an amazing, amazing film. So may I request Prakash Belawadi, who is such a strong voice of Bangalore, to please come onto the stage. Thank you so much, both of you. I want to introduce our, we are expecting Ms. Uma Mahadevan a little later because we have, as I said, the Chief Justice here. But we are so delighted to have Sridevi Changali here with us. Sridevi is, again, one of the first few members of Heritage Beku and has been very, very active in this space, goes above and beyond being an architect and an extremely qualified one. I have to say thank you especially to her for that wonderful installation that she has put up right outside. We have done this before at BIC and others. This is a shorter version, but something to allow us to interact with the Bangalore heritage in a more meaningful way, with divergent paths, with interactivity, which I think is what is really known. And what I like so much about Sridevi is that both she and her partner, Rosie Paul, are so committed not just to the city, but to make sure that all the elements that Bangalore has had for so long are individually looked at and respected and preserved. So I've seen many of her, wonderful works, and I've been, while she's, she's been a heritage consultant to IHCN, she's the principal architect of Masons Inc., and done a huge amount of work with conservation, with the arts. Her first focus with me is primarily on the, what we can do about Bangalore. And we are so grateful that we have a mind and a heart in architects like Sridevi, who bring in also a youthful focus to look at things a little differently. I think that's really what we really want to do. So Sridevi, please do come up on the stage, and thank you so much for being so generous with the installation and to being a panelist. I will introduce Uma when she does come up. And I will settle down whenever she does. So Uma Mahadevan is the Development Commissioner, and hopefully she will be here by about 4:15 or a little later. But right now, let's get into it. The panel has started on time, which is a shock and horror to most people, but we have started at 4 o'clock. We have about 10 minutes at the end of it for questions, if you do, and we will follow this up with Prasad taking over. Prasad and of course Pavitra Mudayya, who is the expert on textiles and heritage. So that is for a little later, but let's dive into the panel right now, if that's okay with you. Guys, ready? 10 minutes for questions and answers, so please do keep that. Thank you so much first for being here. And for, I think World Heritage Day is either, is it on? Can you hear? I always feel there's a lot of pressure on World Heritage Day that we must change the whole world and we must do this immediately. And we must make ourselves heritage ready or conserve all buildings overnight. I wish we could, but I don't think we can. Now, I want to set the context really for the word, the fact that we've used the word future of heritage. There's something faintly oxymoronic about that. Just give me a second. So I'm just going to do this before. Ramji, I also thought it was a good idea to talk a little bit about the future of heritage. So it does feel a bit like a linguistic glitch, right? A collision of two timelines that really doesn't match. Heritage is sort of looked at as a closed book, something that we deal with and move on. Past perfect state where everything is ready, decided, tucked away in dusty, museums or whatever. But in a city like Bangalore, where we're hurtling towards a future in a breakneck speed, literally a future tense speed, treating heritage as a relic is a dangerous form of urban amnesia. So the oxymoron in some way is our hook. Past forward is to acknowledge that heritage is not a rear view mirror. It is the compass. And I think that's an interesting shift, something that we keep looking back on, rear view mirror. Maybe this is a compass that helps us think. It's the future, it's about how we live, the tech, the transit, the high rises. The heritage actually is the why. It's a soul that prevents a city from becoming mere coordinates on a map and keeps it home. When we speak of a past forward, we are arguing that the most innovative thing a city can do is not just build something new, but recognize the value in what it's already stood the test of time. So there's a triple mandate here. We can, we must, and we should. Having set the context of the future of heritage, and I hope there is one, and I know there is one, I'm going to start, Prakash, with you, if I may. You speak often, and you breathe and live the city. I very rarely have come across someone who is so authentically and intellectually engaged with the city and also with your heart. You talk about the soul of city being its narrative. And how does that translate into how we deal with the city on a daily basis in order to maintain its future? There's a daily life of the city, which is which should be its future. How do we integrate the daily with the future?
I think the table is sitting.
Prakash, there's also one more element, where heritage is considered to be like a hurdle to development. So it's like it's either or.
Thanks, Priya, for that introduction. Very generous. Thank you. I'm actually really looking forward to what Ramji will say, because I think he's going to set off a series of arguments and readings after his book is published. Although I haven't read the book, I've seen the division of chapters that he has done, and I can tell you that it's going to set off a series of discussions, as it should. See, the conflict in the city is in the way we have imagined the city, each one of us. See, this is a very successful city. That it's ugly, the way it has gone is violent and all is one part of it, but really it's extremely successful, and it's been growing at between 9% and 12% from now more than 40 years. And the people who are part of that success are not crying as like we are crying, I think. The other thing is that the city has been imagined as a sanctuary, like, beautiful weather and great parks are there, and after retirement you can come and live here. I think that has been completely smashed. I don't think that. Although I can tell you that many people, who've retired from very big jobs in government in Delhi, they come and actually do settle down in Bangalore in spaces that where they don't need to intersect so much with the way the city's daily life is. And there's a third aspect of it that I think somehow struggles and survives, if not in the high register that it was before, which created C.V. Raman and all that, but it's about a contemplative city, which engages in thinking and science and research and so on. And that does survive, but not exactly in the way that you want to maybe, but it's there. We must acknowledge it. And when these things happened, they happened with a kind of autonomy that was very pleasing. And what I mean is that when it was founded as a kind of productive city, which is the successful city, it was imagined as a busy, productive center where there will be, we'll be manufacturing torpedoes and textiles and all kinds of things. And no, because that's how it was. It was everything, and because it was commercially successful, I think people looked to develop parks here and and create it as a sanctuary. But it was autonomous at that time. But what has happened later is, after 1956, when Bangalore became the capital of a unified Karnataka, all this changed. And that it became the political center of Karnataka has been quite disastrous for the imagination of the city, because the people who decide the fate of the city now do not love the city. They see it as a place of commercial exploitation. A lot of it, under the table, as we say, but also because it is the nature of the beast here, that it is a very attractive city for people who want to come and do work here. So I think when we say, there is Bhavabhuti's Uttara Ramacharita, which has the same kind of contradiction that you have in the future of heritage. Because to think of a Uttara Ramacharita is a strange idea, because it's the way you imagine Rama, in the future. That's what it seems to be saying, or Rama's story in the future. So those of us who are persistent in thinking this city belongs to us have to make a concession. I'll stop with that. We must accommodate the successful city, and we must find ways of negotiating with the political beings that are there, who are served by bureaucrats. I wish Uma were here, and we must find a way to negotiate and keep even if we cannot keep the aspect of sanctuary that well, at least a contemplative city we must keep, otherwise, it will become a very ugly place. So, thanks.
I can't even imagine Bangalore being an ugly place, but the fact is that the descent is a possibility, and it's already happening, But some great points there, Prakash, and also the dichotomy of the ones who possibly have decision-making power may not actually share the love of the city that many here do. So that is something we have to look at, is how do we make that happen? I'm not saying there's an easy answer, but I think it's just important to be able to address that. I'm going to jump to Sridevi, since you're next door. Sridevi, how do we make this be, this whole approach to Bangalore be a swipe right? make it fun and attractive. I've always said that unless you make heritage approachable and usable and you're having fun with it, it's just going to go into a dusty box. That's just the way it is. So what's your thoughts on the swipe right that we should possibly look at for heritage?
Thanks, Priya. I think that's a lovely thought. And at Mason Sink, yes, that's our main goal, make heritage sexy again. And if we're able to do that, that's a huge success. So I'm really happy to be here today, and to be honest, quite overwhelmed to be, sharing with such eminent speakers. From my own perspective of heritage and how to make it more relevant is an extremely important task, and it's something that we have been trying together and as Mason Sink over a decade now. So again, I want to look at this through the lens of a conservationist first, somebody from the profession. So when I look at it from that lens, I want to look at the top-down approach, where we look at everything that Heritage Beku speaks about in terms of activism, in terms of making changes at that bureaucratic level. I think that's extremely important. But as we all know, that's going to take time, or is it going to even happen, right? So we have a lot of doubts to that. The minute we make, again, with my experience with Smart City Bhubaneswar, IHCN here, in the time that we take to convince, the person in charge has been shifted out, and then we start the process
So
all
true.
over again. And it's challenging, but it's something that we must not give up. And it's very heartening to see that all of you juggle so many things, and that's the inspiration for us as the younger generation to be like, yes, if you can manage all of this and more, I think the onus needs to fall on the shoulders of the next generation and the young folk, the folk younger than me in the audience for sure. So that's from the top down, which is challenging, which of course needs heavy hitters. Now, we work at the grassroots, even in our practice as architects and our practice as heritage. So what are we talking about when we look at the bottom up, and how do we make that change? I personally feel that we can say heritage activism is successful if heritage is protected in spite of the lack of bylaws, in spite of the lack of political will, in spite of the lack of any kind of government support. I think there are people in the audience who have this, and even the citizen-run groups. I think there's a lot of power in that. So that's what we take our focuses on, is to change that perspective. And I would invite all of you to see the installation. It's interactive. So that's been our focus over the past decade plus, working in the grassroots, reaching out to people. And the other challenge we know is that this is such a beautiful initiative Heritage Beku has brought together. I would love to see the auditorium overflowing and people not being able to sit, right? So that's one challenge we have experienced as well, but I'm happy to see all of you guys who've taken the trouble to come. So interestingly, I think it's just to kind of sum up, it's really important to take heritage to the people. And again, the packaging and the branding needs to be in a way that it's aspirational to own a heritage home, or it's aspirational to safeguard heritage rather than look at it as a burden or look at it as something that comes in the way of development. It can go hand in hand. So essentially, yes, so just to come back to the point of bringing people to be able to view or interact with heritage. The second exhibition that we did hands-on, it was called Heritage on Wheels, where we actually took the heritage to the people. We had 3 spots. There was Cubbon Park, Sankey Tank, and Fort High School. So we realized that this is the problem, right? Bangalore is a large city. When you put traffic overlay over that, it takes a long time to reach. So I think what's important for my generation and the generation to come is to see how to package this in a way that it becomes aspirational to have a heritage tag. So success of heritage without actually having the stick, rather having the success through carrot itself. Right? So that would be the...
When you said making it cool, this is something we've talked about for a long time. And at Heritage Beku, I've been on various panels when I've raised a few eyebrows when I said all we have to do, we have figured out a way of making heritage sexy. I mean, that is how is it cool? Non-negotiable, essential, and also something aspirational. I do believe, and I'm going to add to what you were saying, that it is in the last few years, with occasions and platforms like Bangalore Habba, or the kind of emphasis that the government is now increasingly giving to, to reach outs or to, you're seeing a different level of interaction. And I think that's very positive, because the way people question, or the things that they ask for, the information they want to know, is exponentially gone up. So that, I think, is a very good thing in the right direction. So maybe the swipe right will happen a little sooner than we think. And I also feel that it's, what is the word for it? When you are looking at something which is old, it's definitely something which is kind of disused or no longer beautiful, or not something that that I think has to go. But the kind of conversations and interactions that are happening, I'm just positive and reasonably optimistic that we are on a path. You made an important point about the structural lack, which is a huge gap for us. But that's for another day. I mean, that's a conversation we want to have, but I'm saying it requires a lot of focus. And we've been working very hard, as you know, to look at the policy issues as well. Ramji, I want to move on to that phenomenal set of podcasts. And, we've had discussions on this subject before, but those podcasts, thank you so much, Prakash. That's so sweet. They have really changed. I don't know how many million views you have, but there are some tons of views. And I see questions, I see interactions, and I see genuine interest and engagement on your Instagrams. And I know that your Instagram is only just a sort of a segue into the bigger Spotify or the YouTube that you do. I want to ask you, for a person who's been a media entrepreneur and very, very strongly invested in the city, how did this happen? Because now I cannot say these are podcasts. You're really moved to being a historian of the city by delving very deep. But you're seeing the past, the past as it is. You're seeing a future largely imperfect. And you see a lot of glass facades while you do your wonderful podcasts. You go in a direction trying to figure out which is your next port of call, as it were. And you discover a lot of gaps in communication, in history. What's been your motivation, and what do you see as the future of heritage and history in Bangalore, Ramji?
So, when you told me that this was the topic of today's discussion, like everybody else, I'm sure, my big struggle was, how do you define heritage? And it's such a vast topic that you have to take a slice of it and make that your slice and see what you can do with it. And because of the work that I have been doing on the history of Bangalore itself, all my references are set in the past. So, but it's a continuity that you're talking about. And your basic question is, how do you keep this continuity going? And how far do you go back? So the question is, it's a continuity of what? That is what you're looking to do right now. And to look at it, you articulated it fairly well from one lens. But if you saw it from another lens, the way I look at it is that heritage per se is not what we fight to remember, but what we choose to forget, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, what are the things that we have chosen to forget, for instance? So look at the urban chaos of Bangalore. So people say Bangalore is completely broken, it doesn't work correctly. I'm saying it isn't broken. It's working exactly like it was designed to work. It has not gone wrong. It has gone right. By whom? By the people who decided that it was going to be this way. So zoning, for example, zone areas with no mind to approach roads. Go ahead and take all the lakes and turn them. Some lakes had to go, not all of them had to go. Right? But then you change the urban spatial sense of the city with only one thing in mind: how much can you zone? I'm not even going to how much corruption there is involved in that. Those are easy tropes to do. But the question is, what are we fighting for? The question is, what are we choosing to forget? For instance, I'll give you some throwbacks from history, and I'm being very frothy about what I'm saying right now to make it quick. But if you go back to history, everyone, you're talking about all the people that talk to me about the history of Bangalore. A couple of things why I chose to do what I do. Like everybody else, I thought, whatever I'd read is that the history of Bangalore began in 1537 when Kempegowda built the Pete. One day I asked myself, what made him build that Pete? He just didn't decide, yes, there was going to be a Pete, and 7 times in Karnataka's history, a rabbit has chased a dog, all right? And then suddenly there was something that happened. So this is one of them. One rabbit was here in Bangalore apparently, but leave that aside. What about the pragmatic, hard-headed business sense of a man called Kempegowda who decided there's an opportunity here and I'm going to take it? How much of the business that we have in the city today, when we talk about startup city, etc., how many of us choose to remember or choose to forget that the city started on a startup like that? All right? Based on what? How did Bangalore come about? We're right in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nothing. And this is a very strange city because the geography of the city is reflective of the geography of the southern Deccan Plateau. It's all contained in this one city. If you go towards the east of the city, and by this I mean Bengaluru, Indranagar, and all of those areas, you will find large marshy swamplands, rice cultivation and paddy cultivation. Go towards the west of the city, let's just go further out from here. Very soon, you arrive at very rocky, inhospitable outcrop. So when you take a drive outside the city, you'll find these strange looking boulders that come up. That's all a part of what is called the Dharwad Craton form well before history, from prehistory. This is how it was during this point in time. This city has existed straddling both these geographies, and both these geographies have contributed to the history. Now, what does that exactly mean when you look at the city per se? What sort of heritage are you looking to remember? So people that came in from the west of the city, they're hardy people. They ate ragi because that's the only thing that would grow over there. That's why ragi mudayya is the staple diet. On the other side, just cross it and move further east, you'll find rice is the principal crop that grows in there. So here, when we talk about the history of culture, we talk about the history of food, and we pick and choose things to remember, we also come down to the history of science. Now, we remember that the Dowager Rani gave land to construct the IIC, and because of that, we have modern day technology. How many of us know, for instance, I discovered much to my delight by reading a book that was written by a young British officer in the year 1801, because he was wandering around the Pete, who said he found evidence of something called the Leyden jar that Tipu Sultan used to play with. The Leyden jar was world's first capacitor of electricity. Those days there was static electricity, and people already knew that by storing electricity in this Leyden jar, things could happen. That's all they knew about it. In Tipu Sultan's hands, he used to give this Leyden jar to his aristocrats, his generals, and would pass electricity through it and watch them suffer and remain stoic. Right? All this is written by this young British officer in this book. The question is, talked about rocketry, you talked about rockets and so on. These rockets were built in one of the 4 factories that Hyder had constructed called the Taramandala. And in these rockets were an improvement on Chinese rockets and the others with the use of metal tubes, built by whom? Built by the French people who were employed in the city at that point in time. You had a thriving cantonment. It was called Kalasipalaya. All right? How many of us remember that? The reason I'm writing the book is to answer your question. It's a very long answer to your question. But to come back to the point, the reason I'm writing the book is because my discovery, walking through the Pete, has taken me into all kinds of areas and all that history has been available for us to see, but we have chosen to forget it. So we have chosen to forget that the world's first DRDO, India's at least, first DRDO, Defense Research Organization, was here in Taramandala Pete, where they were firing rockets. ISRO, it's a forerunner of ISRO. Indian Institute of Science was a much later construct, in my opinion. If I just look at all of the different instrumentation that was there. Manufacturing of armament factories, that he had 2 bullocks. 2 bullocks would go around in circles, and there would be it was attached to a boring machine that could bore 1 cannon and 15 muskets every day, right? So this is the kind of history that we have had. But it took me more the better, but because I work at a furious pace, it took me some 8 months to even discover that this was the case. So when Prakash was talking about my book and what's going to happen, I'm appending a lot of these things and bringing out a lot of the history that comes about. So the question really is, what I ask you, I'm going to throw this question back at you, is when you say heritage Beku, which is the heritage that we Beku, right? So where do we start? Where do we draw the line in the sand and say, okay, this is what we want to remember? My point is simply that we have to recognize that we have always been a rather plural system. And we have understood that we live in a time when there's a plurality of everything that exists. So we're here in this building over here. Ironically, we're having this discussion here, which is one of the last legacies of the city that's still standing. So should we tear it down because we want to remember a newer history? Or should we not? And if we're not going to tear this down, what else are we not going to tear down? And how do we get back? I want to close out with one thing. There's a reel coming up on Instagram that I did. You know, we talked about the first time that Kempegowda harnessed some bullocks to plows and cut some lines in the sand, and those became Doddapete and Chikkapete, which is Chickpet Street and Avenue Road today. I went a few days ago to the spot where it started. And I was standing there, and I did a reel on that spot saying, this is where Bangalore started. And I'm looking around me, not a plaque, nothing to earmark that this is the case. So my big question was, does anyone even know about it? So there were some guys hanging around, shopkeepers, auto rickshaw drivers. So I went up and spoke to them. This jaga em gotta nimge? I said, where is this place? And said, Gottu sir, ide avaru Kempegowda bandralla, ide hakidu. The whole history, right? So my point is, it lives in memory over there. Those guys understand that this is the spot where it started. For them, like, yeah, you know, they put bullocks over there, that's what happened. Would you like to go somewhere? It's auto. So my point is, it's simple. He wants to come down to a transaction very, very quickly. Rather than feel that, oh, then maybe I don't have a story. After all, I said, what a story I have right now. Because in that guy's mind, heritage lives. Does it in ours?
You know, I sometimes wonder about neural networks where we all sit together and just connect up our brains and share, you know, common histories and common pasts in some ways. Ramji, when you talked about this, I do remember saying my initial transactional response to that was, oh, we must put up a plaque immediately. But that is not a response. We, I think, are seeing so many places which are tucked away. And some of these are places, and some of them are memories. Some of them are experiences. But I think the effort to this plurality, and the effort to aggregate, even if it is not perfect, if it's not fully researched, needs to be done. Because it's almost like you need to be able to gather, and filter later. But the gathering is critical. Now this place is not something which is unknown, but it's been 20 years, and we still don't have something that commemorates it. I remember I was in Vienna, and there was one plaque about somebody who came on a cycle and discovered this, and there he was. And I'm saying, but it wasn't even exciting, interesting, historical, or relevant. But I was saying, oh wow. Then I appreciated the tree around it for some reason. But the ability to quickly, to mark a spot, or to be able to celebrate that something happened, is something. Is there a change in what is happening, experienced, how people are responding to the places around them, rather than moving from being a community of users to a community of collective thought, of maybe somewhere collective action? I am being reasonably optimistic, saying at a certain level and a certain level of interest of people wanting to engage harder with their city or invest a little bit more, Ramji, I truly believe it is happening. But the pace is furiously and frustratingly slow. And that's I think what we're facing every single day. Where it really matters is at the higher level, where I might know, but what am I going to do about it? And the people who have the power often don't have the wherewithal, no, they may not have the desire to take it the whole mile. And therein lies the rub. So that's where I think the whole citizen, government, stakeholder, that relationship gets a little bit more structured, should get more structured. But those stories are amazing, absolutely, absolutely amazing. Prakash, if I make, and thank you Ramji for that, because there are stories which I'm sure, I want you to come back, I want to come back to that later. But there's stories which I'm sure have changed you completely, things that you have met or seen and then said, oh my God. And I want you to share that at some point, because that really comes down to, I'm coming back to Prakash and, the fact that for most of us, and you know what a Philistine I am and the way I started, all of us, many of us don't know as much as we should, but we stumble by. Because we're doing we're doing these programs in the bandstand, it does not mean I'm an expert in Carnatic music, but I do want to have the music in the bandstand. So there is a certain level of, I may not know about it, but I do want to make sure it continues. I want to preserve. So I have a little bugbear about ward level heritage. That's something I've been working on for a while. But from a perspective of what's in your backyard, the fact that heritage is seen primarily as big palaces, everything is large. So if you're heritage, you must be big. That's something which I think takes away. We found things in our backyard. That we wanted to look at how do we democratize it. And this issue of ward level heritage. You remember what a story that we had right here in Ward 93, where we tried to figure out more engagement on heritage. And some of it was how we discovered a back to front building called Bolia, and how that changed the way the post office looked at themselves. The building was leaking, and nobody knew that the building that we've been watching for years was actually back to front. The entrance was from another side and had been sealed a long time ago. We discovered about a kilometer away something called MMS, a little mail service for the post office, which was an exquisite building, which was 1912 or something like that, 1920. We discovered a locomotive, which was 1933, 35, in Indira Gandhi Park. And that was after I spoke to someone and said, why don't you get rid of this junk? Till I discovered what that junk was and what a story it was. So we had the mystery locomotive, covering so many newspapers were so excited about it because people were engaging with it in a different way. And this happened, Prakash, in our ward, because at the time of COVID, we were looking at pushing this ward level heritage. We developed a walking trail. We worked with DULT. We worked with Smart City, BWSSB, to popularize the route. So cycling paths, signages, etc. were planned. It didn't really happen. But this is an exciting example of how big heritage and little heritage or local heritage works better when you have ownership and a democratization. So I own it because it's my area. Your area, you would be much more interested because you know every nook and cranny. I know a lot of places around here. So this big and small and the ownership and the completion, what are your thoughts on how do we make heritage more democratic?
There are so many things that are running through my mind. See, firstly, when Ramji says that, guy says, this is where Kempegowda started it. He lives in a continuum. That's a Bengaluru that is continuous. So, but I don't know whether the commercially successful people that have come later in later ages understand that it was because Bengaluru was started as a business city that business is happening here. There was a time when the Nehruvian imagination created public sector places here, which are now great real estate spaces. But it'll be the commercial thing will eventually overwhelm it, and they will connect with it, and they'll begin to use it. See, it's like the Himalayas. There's always growing. It's an unstable ground. Bangalore is kind of unstable in this because it's growing really fast, and nobody has time to stand and stare, which is what creates the idea of heritage in the first place. And it is because of that, what to keep and what to forget is. I'll tell you one example, which new theatre people, young people who are very passionate about theatre. Actually, Bangalore is quite fascinating that young people like theatre. There's so many theatre groups in the city. They don't know this simple story. Ravindra Kalakshetra was shut down for renovation. It's always shut down for renovation. It's like at end of the month, the police is doing a lot of checking, because they run out of cash. Sometimes Ravindra Kalakshetra needs to go through a renovation, and it gets shut down. At that time, in the backyard of Ravindra Kalakshetra, they put up Shamyana and a stage, and B.V. Karant had come down during a break from National School of Drama where he was studying. This was 1972, and they did 3 plays. Pratima Natakaranga, that was Lankesh led that. He organized the theatre festival. Completely makeshift stuff, They had a stage, and they had with bamboo poles, and they put lights and all that. And they did 3 plays. One was by Lankesh, a translation of Oedipus. Then there was Lankesh's play called Sankranti, which was actually about the 12th century Vachanakaras, Basavanna, and that revolution period. And then there was by Chandrasekhar Kambar a play called Jokumaraswamy. These 3 plays were done. And Girish Karnad acted as King Oedipus. He also acted as the Gauda in Jokumaraswamy. Karanth did the music for all the plays. My dad did makeup for all the 3 plays. And the people who came there, you look at the names, Karnad, Karanth, Chandrasekhar Kambar. All those people just happened with that festival of 3 plays, and it just started a new era of modern Kannada theatre, because till then it was a T.P. Kailasam and comedy of manners and kind of theatre used to be. Then suddenly from that we had a modern Kannada theatre that emerged from just those 3 plays. Even today, the great stalwarts of theatre that are there actually came from that time. All the actors who acted in those plays became big actors later. The reason I tell you this is that there are such things happening in pockets all over Bangalore. And one of its manifestations is suddenly when you're driving through some place in Bangalore, one section of Bangalore is suddenly lit, a small section with series lights, and with it's great art, with series lights. They have, Devi or, Narasimha or some god actually blinking, at you in strange ways. And you'll think, why is this happening? Because there are some 81 or 82 extant villages in Bangalore that do their own Nada Habba or Uru Habba kind of thing. And they live in the kind of continuum that Ramji just mentioned. So when I posit this back to you, I'm saying the successful people are not represented in this room. Our imagination of heritage should imagination that the growth they want, the numbers they want to tell their shareholders, those people are not here, and the beneficiaries of that are not here. Even in the contemplative Bangalore, which means research and science and all that, academia, Christ College, which Ramji will remember, was just one college in Bangalore, it's not the Christ University that it is today. In that college building, there are 25,000 people. The last time I went there 2 weeks ago for some seminar. There are 25,000 people in that campus, students and faculty put together. That's incredible growth. And they should feel what we are talking about, connects to them. That link is broken, and I'm hoping that Ramji's book kind of thing will give us some opportunity to connect successful people to why they're successful. They should know why Bangalore happened. And I think if we can achieve that through Heritage Beku, and we can be the nodal place, and this place, then people are begging you for tickets to, when we do the next time we do a seminar here, there should be like people begging for tickets to be a part of this. That will happen if we start by being generous and saying, you are here, because that happened, and we point to Ramji telling that, and we can have somebody saying, that's how I got this. I remember going to, Prasad's place, DNPG. That is heritage. To me, I feel really sad that that is not there anymore. For instance, that mezzanine thing where, they'll be sitting and doing drawings. He was running a magazine at that time, completely bold enterprise, on fashion, All that was there, and all that is actually quite easily retrievable, I feel. That is quite easy to get. So when somebody does unboxing Bengaluru and spends 8 crores or 10 crores every year, Prashant Prakash spends, I feel there should be a connection to where Bangalore came from. This eagerness to belong to Bangalore, is a little bit of a thing in a hurry, and that's not so great. It should be, even that unboxing Bangalore should be imagined by connecting it to the greater idea of Bangalore, which is the little Bangalore that you were just talking in your question, which Ramji mentioned from his encounter at that, standing there at that spot. A lot of Bangalore just lives like this anyway. And to integrate it, I think that festival was possible because the Ravindra Kalakshas was shut down. Just imagine this. It's like, it's actually a necessity because the government is not grabbing that space. Actually, the reason Ravindra Kalakshas has dried up as a very big cultural center is that if theatre folk actually book the theatre, if the government has a function, they can cancel it. You could have sold the tickets and you could have done advertising. It is the best theatre, one of the best theatres in India. But the thing is, you can do very big plays there, but we cannot do it anymore because we are scared. We moved the Deccan Herald Theatre Festival from Ravindra Kalakshatra to Chowdai Hall because of this nonsense, you don't know when they'll take over to do a function. And Chowdai Hall developed as a very major place. So when we say heritage, from where all do we include? Is it some continuous process? Only then the future of heritage is imaginable. That there are continuous things. Deccan Herald Theatre Festival was a great thing. We have tried to revive it in many different ways. I remember how I went to Ramji and he was doing Explosity and said, you should take over. And it was a very successful festival that year. Then when I was in Asian Age, I tried to persuade, MJ Akbar, to agree to this. And first year we managed to do it because Vijay Mallya was in Bangalore that time and we could do the festival here. The moment it became successful, MJ Akbar wanted to do it in Kolkata, and the festival just died. I'm just saying, it is really possible, and Heritage Beku can do this, I think, but we must structure the connections, I think, between the past and the present, between the little and the big, between the business side of Bangalore, the commercial, productive, enterprise side of Bangalore, and the Bangalore of the imagination, which is theatre and poetry and history writing and so on. You have Nirupama Rajendra, you have Rukmini Vijay Kumar. They're a continuum from the past. They're doing great work. There is, Jai, who is doing, he's an international figure, I'm saying we should be able to connect all these people in some way, and Heritage Beku should be that connector, which can fill this room always and can fill any hall when you do something. And it will be possible if the panel itself is represented like that, not people saying, the city belongs to us. Actually, it's taken and owned by somebody else, it seems to me now. I don't know why we are saying this. I think we should call them. And we should tell them, and Infosys calls its little building at the center of 93 acres. It's a scandalous, actually, that they call it their heritage building. I'm thinking, what are we talking about, What are we saying? Was a graduate when they did that heritage building. So I think what we're calling heritage and what they're thinking of as heritage is very different. And we must be able to connect.
Prakash, the connection is something that is very valuable. I mean, you've talked about different levels, different platforms, and almost a different ethos. I am so basic in the way I'm saying that for me, I'm so scared and some way so greedy that I'm saying aggregate before it goes away. That's one way of looking at it. But the delicacy, the nuance that comes from figuring out who to what, when respecting different points of view, imaginations, socioeconomic levels, all of this. Sometimes I feel we are just too homogenized in the way we approach things. And I understand that, but I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how we can do it except the standard way we've done it for a long time and keep breaking the mold every now and then without losing momentum. Because momentum is a big thing. If we lose momentum, sometimes we lose the city. And I'm taking very strong, what you've said, very strongly what you've said, that somewhere we have to be custodians, because if nobody else does, we understand that balance. We understand that it needs to be done, but it has to be respected. It has to be respectful in more ways than one. And one of the reasons why I've been pushing a ward level heritage is nobody knows their place, their people, their spaces, their ethos, their culture, more than the people who live in that space. I mean, we may joke about Whitefield being another city. There's a lot of history heritage right there, which we will never get to see. Or in Bengaluru, or any other parts of town, unless we are allowed to invest. So if we are, and this is something which from Heritage Beku I really feel we have already made many representations, but we would like this to be better structured, is if it is embedded in each ward as one of the things that the ward should look at. Water, power, electricity, heritage. I think preservation, pride, and conservation, and dissemination in some ways.
Preserve the local business.
Exactly. It's a simple thing that if you don't, then the party that most invested in continuity is not anymore. So you absolutely make sense. So if we get this ward level heritage going, there is a focus which is hyper-local. And therein lies the strength, therein lies the network, and then you can build it up across the city.
I want to make one point, okay? Ramji, you'll be interested in this. The, what is that road which has got all these electronic goods and... No, not that one. You know, this Subedar Chatram Road. Not Subedar Chatram. No, that is on that side. Yeah. No, all that area, the shops are run by overwhelmingly by Marwadis, and they had approached me to talk to Arundhati Nag, to ask her to talk to the government to see whether they can buy the property there. The property does not belong to them. The property is given as a gift after Tipu Sultan was overthrown, in 1791. That was given to the Marathi people who actually helped, defeat Tipu. They own the space. The Marwadis run the business. You can't tear it down and build big things there because it's so complicated, because you cannot break the momentum that you're talking about. Business is happening. There is no way to close it, move it somewhere else, which is why city market you cannot move. So I'm just saying, all these things are there. If they're not accommodated, the government cannot do everything. It has to be done by society. And if they can be accommodated in some way, that is all I'm saying. We should include them in this story. If we did a conference, this is an idea, Heritage Beku idea. If we did a festival, a week-long or even a month-long festival of the 82 villages of Bangalore, and what their different cultures are, what their languages are, and why do they continue to do their local deities. If you do a festival, maybe we will begin to find one level of integration that is in continuum from the past, Then, they have that unboxing Bangalore, which looks to include, new Bangalore business with what is happening now. But we should be there in the center to coordinate this, I'm saying. See if I don't know how you can do this, somebody should suggest.
It's something that needs granulation. I mean, needs a little bit of, it shouldn't be done too vanilla, but it's something that I think is a really good idea. So both of these, Prakash, I'll loop back with you and definitely work on. And I'm going to request, Sridev, you talked about micro the micro aspect of the city, looking for hidden paths. I know Mason's Inc. has been doing lots of interesting work in that. For example, Kusuma, you'd be interested to know, we've been asking Sridevi to look at the SPCA little building which is on the corner of Kasturba Road. We've asked them to look at Fern House, which is in Cubbon Park, to give the historical and heritage perspective so that it can be used and appreciated in that context. So that they are things which they're also interested in. So a little bit about that, because these are also required.
Sure, Priya. So this is something I love talking about, and I just want to go back about 12 years when I graduated from the University of York in conservation, and I came back with the idea that I will save the heritage of India. That's how delusional I was once I finished my studies. Came back and realized that back then, again, I think it's very true that, like you're saying, the interest in heritage has, gone up 2x, 3x, both from the professional and from the stakeholders, the citizens groups, and all of that. So when I came back, quickly realized that I'm not going to change anything, leave alone the entire heritage of the country. So from the education you get, you are taught that you can save heritage only through policy, and that was something that as a 27-year-old I couldn't touch really. So then with Rosie, we were ideating, and we at that point lived near Richards Park, and we would go on these walks. Again, you're starting off your business, so you have a lot of time, very few projects. And that's when we saw these small little bungalows in your quarter-acre properties, a typical cantonment with the conservancy lanes, all that we started reading as professionals from an urban fabric, and we thought, wow, this is so beautiful. What was sad to note is that every time we would go for a walk, say monthly once, or even sometimes even closer, we would see buildings come down. We would see those horrible blue sheets, and that's when, heartbreak. So hands are tied. We don't have too much political clout. We don't know what to do. So the next best thing that I believe is, if you can't save, at least document. So it starts from there. We start by at least documenting it, so you have that data available looking back. And exactly what you said in the beginning is that you cannot save what you don't love, and then you need to know what is to save. So that you need to know is what we were working on. And back then it was just it was a passion project. It was not driven by any other kind of intention, still not. And from that it's become so lovely, where I've crossed paths with you, and so it's become bigger than what we had expected, as just two friends doing something meaningful that we love. So I think that point of being able to document the numbers and just get that done as the first step, and then move forward in terms of policy and creating that activism with the higher stakeholders in terms of bureaucrats and governments. So I feel even in the last 10 years, we've done about 6 or 7 exhibitions, and the kind of perspectives that we get from the public stakeholders is quite interesting, the way they react or interact with heritage. We've been able to reach out to certain house owners and kind of been able to, through activism, kind of convince them that there is something more that can be done. And it's interesting to see the whole approach towards adaptive reuse. There are some gems that we have in Bangalore, say Sabha or any other Cinnamon, as examples of how heritage can still be transformed and still be made relevant. Even the mini ones that create that the beauty around that particular neighborhood. So basically, I feel the right data to be able to show people why and what heritage needs to be protected, kind of peel back on that layer and have the technical documentation done. And we also run a small initiative called Dr. House, where we provide free consultation for heritage owners. So one thing that we've realized with our interactions on the ground, on the grassroots level, is that there is a lot of misinformation that is passed around, especially between contractors. And to know the other side of it, it's extremely lucrative to bring down a heritage house. The value that has, purely from an economic physicality of it, the intangible values are, of course, quite obvious to all of us here. But the actual economics behind bringing down a house is enormous. And they are given false information saying that this is dangerous to your life. and that if you don't fix it, it's going to fall on your head and your whole family is going to end a generation. That is not always true. Like they'll point at some damp and say, it's so to kind of counter that. That's why we've come up with Dr. House, and we would love for more heritage owners to come up to us and kind of get that information free of cost initially. And then of course the fixing of it is another problem which we'll have to address in terms of incentivization or some sort of help, tax incentives. All those are there. You know how hard it is to kind of actually bring that down.
But these are, coming back to the issue, that there are micro elements that need to be done. Now this Dr. House is a wonderful initiative. I mean, it's something that allows the transition from a homeowner who might give up out of fear, out of economics, we don't know, but at least they know what they're giving up. And I hope that gets the publicity that it deserves, because it's an important initiative. And here's where you're putting your money where your mouth is, quite literally. My last question I'm going to ask, or we're going to lead with Ramji, to also weigh in a little bit on his the reason behind his podcast. But before that, I mean, and after that, talk about one magic wand that you think will fix the crumbling heritage of Bangalore and make us future perfect. The magic wand, that is for later, but I want that, you were talking about how you got into this space. And there's a reason. There were some stories that really held you captive, and which is why you continued. So I'd love to know a little bit about that before we do the magic wand to all three and close.
This space that I got into per se, what I'm doing right now, the history of Bangalore, is the culmination of what I've been doing for decades. So in the early stages, I was just chronicling Bangalore, but I was chronicling Bangalore in the sense of telling people where to shop and where to go to a pub. That's how it started. That's what it was. I made no bones about that. Slowly I started getting more into city journalism, and one thing led to another, per se. During this entire time, I have been giving information about Bangalore that I saw from different sources. And for about the better part of 30 years, I have been misleading Bangaloreans. All right? I've been doing nothing but giving false information that I've just found in good faith from published sources. And then I found that they were all practically untrue. So it's very easy for me to do a JLNO kind of walkabout and ask people, where was the first light bulb in India? And they will say it's in Bangalore. No, it wasn't. All right? So there's a whole slew of misinformation about Bangalore. But the reason for that is because nobody from the academy in the history made real information publicly available. So just like any garden, when you don't tend to it, weeds will grow. So in our case, rumors. So all kinds of rumors grow, and then before you know what's happening, rumor based on rumor, based on rumor, etc.
Such good stories. There's such good stories to pass on, So and some of them are untrue, and they're really. I said, I didn't know. I didn't know they were untrue. Even I assumed they were to be fact.
There are many. After I'm done with what I'm doing. I'm sorry.
There you go. Yes.
So there's a lot of rumors that are about Bangalore, about every place. Almost everything that I have learned to be commonly understood about Bangalore turns out to be untrue. All right, and this comes out of a lot of sneezing through archival dust to try and get to the heart of the story, and it's all available. It's all available, but the only problem is you have to plow through acres and acres of written material. I've had to up my Sanskrit game. My Kannada sucks, but my Hale Kannada is better.
Whoa.
All right? So I've learned that more than this, and I can understand some of that better than I can understand. So as a consequence of this, everything that I have found that points back to Bangalore itself takes everything we know about it back several hundred years, right? So the question that you're asking is, like, what is it about heritage? You asked about what's this magic wand kind of thing. I'll answer that in a slightly different way. Yeah. In another panel, in another context, I had to talk about what moves the city. So every city has a buy-in for something. So when I was a kid going to Bombay, for example, I thought that the greatest buy-in for Bombay was traffic sense. Everybody was there. You cannot commit traffic sense. Somebody's going to yell at you. And that's the way it was. In Bangalore, it's greenery, right? You can drive your car up a one-way street. Nobody will, they'll just move out of the way and let you go through and so on. But try cutting a branch of a tree. right? You're going to have some people sitting there and calling people and saying, who should I call to prevent this guy from, do you have permission to do it? How do you, there's that buy-in to the city. So what is this difference? How come there's a buy-in for greenery in Bangalore? How did this public consciousness come into being that there's a buy-in? So the question, if we're not here discussing the psychology of Bangalore, we're talking about the future of heritage. The question is, how do you create this buy-in for heritage? So if enough people knew about heritage, if you talked about walking past, seeing a blue tarpaulin on a building and then feeling awful about that, that guy probably wants to sell it, make a lot of money, buy a big flat and live a luxurious life. Who are you to stop him when nobody else has been stopped? How do you tell this one guy that only his house is now a heritage building and sorry, you're SOL on this issue, right? So it's a little hard to do it. So there needs to be a buy-in. So no one's going to say today, for instance, how dare you let me not cut my tree when everybody else has cut the tree? That doesn't even come up in conversation. You have a tree, you've got to keep the tree. That's all. Now, this is a stretch, and I'm being blithe about this connection. But still, is there a buy-in? So the question is, so I asked myself, do people really care about the history? In fact, when I was telling somebody else of some major note, and I shan't mention names, his initial response to me was, who cares about the history of Bangalore? Well, I'll tell you, in the past few months, almost 1.7 million views every month on my Instagram, on my podcast. Apple declared us to be the best of 2025, right? It's a podcast. And lastly, in the history category, cutting across all categories, we were declared number 2, right next to Willie Drimple's Empire, right? But Willie Drimple's Empire, he's talking about the whole world. I'm only talking about Bangalore. So this one story, and I'm saying all these things partially to praise myself, but principally because I want to point out that there is such a huge amount of history. Okay, what I'm doing has some scale. But every time somebody goes on a walk, they go on walks. And I shan't get into what they say on the walks, but when they go on walks, they still have a lot of following. And I find that people are posting, I went on this walk, thank you so much for the misinformation. I have lots and lots of stuff. It's all fine. It'll all sort itself out one day.
Story is a story.
It's fine. Everything is a story. But nonetheless, there is a buy-in already. But the question that I'm going to put forth to you, because I can say this and I can walk away, leave you with a burden, is that I think that the principal business of Heritage Beku is to focus on trying to bring the sentiment of the city together, because every Bangalorean is really concerned about the heritage. And to your question over there, the new Bangalore, talk about the successful Bangalorean and so on. Every time I've had a conversation with some of them and I purposely come up with some obscure aspect of history, rapt attention. They forget everything. They're listening to me very, very carefully. And this is the reason is everybody wants to find some kind of a link to what they can find. And I think that pretty much defines heritage as it stands. I talked about myself because I can't talk about anybody else. I can tell you, I started it, I've had a great success with it, so why not everybody else? It's as simple as that. So I think this Heritage Beku, expanding it, just to make it a matter of pride, make it sexy, make it this, make it that, all that's fine. But somewhere along the line, we love our trees, we love our green, we will not let somebody cut down a tree. I think somewhere along the line, this pride can be worked out. And some of it, I think, is just can start with simple things like signage in public places. So-and-so lived here, right? That's all. So some of the names that you mentioned, Karnataka, all these people. Who would not be interested to know that Girish Karnad lived here? Simple as that. How does it matter? Go to London. You have Chaucer started his thing. They want to remember because people want to remember. I think we should just, some of us who can, should just make the effort to let people remember it.
Ramji, I'm taking away, apart from the fact-checking part of it, which I think you should look at as an alternative career as well. We'd love to, say, oh, that's great, that's, okay, misinformation number 1, 2, those 3 you can keep. Apart from that, very valuable about keeping the heart of it, keep the fact that there is 1.7 million views, means there's pent-up interest in the city. And if we're talking about the future of heritage, and anybody wants to rain on collective parade and say nothing's happening, this city has gone to just down the drain, nothing is going to happen. You know what I was going to say and I didn't say it. But this is a testament that we have hope and we can do something about it. When we leverage that interest and make it actionable, I think we're onto something better. But this journey has to be properly documented. It must be strategized. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. We're going to go flat on our face. Somebody's not going to like it. But it needs to be done. I mean, I'm very strongly of the opinion of the inputs that you have shared. This is what needs to be done. The magic wand may not be just this. It may be several magic wands. It may be engaging several different stakeholders. But it exists. It must be found. And it must be done. So, very valuable. And from Prakash, what about you? Any thoughts? You've already mentioned something. But something that
No, I have only one. Let's do an annual festival. We'll find a time. After that book comes, what is the best thing to do? We'll find a time. And we should do a festival called Parampara every year. Heritage Beku does it. We'll find sponsors for it. We'll start small. It may just be just text that people read. We can start with that, but we must start that. Every year we must do this, and we will find new things, and people will feel. Everyone, the reason people will like the past is that they need to feel more important than they were before. Because if you live in a city and you realize that you have a connection to the city in some way, or where you're standing means something else more than what you thought it was, people feel better. And so we must give information. I absolutely, totally agree with that. We must do that. And we must, every year, let's do that festival called Parampara.
Some very fun, valuable, important, impactful suggestions. And I would actually, there are so many other things I want to ask all three of you, but for another day and for another time, I'm sure, and I think we should have something exciting and fun in the next time, where we have a buzzing hall and lots of questions. We're going to pass on the questions because I think we've overridden time a little bit. Bear with me. We will have the next session coming up in just a little while. But may I just say a very, very warm and grateful thank you for thinking and loving the city, and for sharing in our own perfect, imperfect way that we really have a lot to do in terms of participation, ownership in saving it. We really do. So we've got to, I guess, sometime move from Heritage Beku to Heritage Namdu, and I hope that happens sooner than later. But the stories in each one's place right here, I mean, I think there's a book in each one. Ramji's already got his out. Really need to do a lot more. And I think all of us as citizens need to understand that unless we engage and unless we ask and we demand and we protect, we're going to be the ones on the sidelines crying and saying, it used to be such a beautiful place. I think that is, I'm going to move on from that horrible thought to say, we have people who are excited. We have people who want to know more about the city. We have people who are finding different ways to walk into different parts of Bangalore and try and figure out the history. We see people who look around at a building or a park and say, this will never go, and I love this with all my soul. I don't know why, but I love this with all my soul. And that's a Bangalorean who will say, nothing will touch my city. And that's who all of us are. But we're going to put some action elements on it, and we will ensure that this discussion, which has gone in different directions and interesting, and I would say we are aggregating, is going to be the future of heritage in as much as we can. There is hope, there is optimism, and there is a Heritage Namdu going forward. So panelists, Prakash, Sridevi, Ramji, thank you so much for a continuing conversation, I hope, on this Parampara next year. I'm going to hold you to that. And the book, hopefully the launch sometime soon. Dr. House, love the idea. So can we have a round of applause for our wonderful panelists? Thank you so much, and look forward to the next session. So can we, just one second, we have a little plant for you. And Prasad, I'm going to sort of be all set for your next session. So we are now talking about the textiles and heritage that's coming up. So hold your horses for a couple of minutes. And thank you so much, all three of you, for taking the time. And for the fact that when we have a chat, time never, it starts off a little difficult, but I'm saying it never is enough to be able to complete all the thoughts and the excitement that we have. So a big round of applause for our panelists and the next one now. Thank you so much. Do we have a picture? Somebody taking a picture? Some kind soul Raj will take a picture. I realize we won't have a documentation of this. Thank you so much. On to the next. We are going to go on to the next wonderful session, which is showcasing our heritage textiles of Karnataka. I'm going to hand this over to him in just a bit. But there's a lot of interesting conversation that happened just now, and we are going to build on it. Please follow our Heritage Beku's Instagram. We'll try and summarize some of the discussions on the institutionalization, the ward maps, the cultural tourism, the parampara, and all the things we talked about, and also the know, love, save loop that we all need to get to be a part of. So, do you need any help? Are we okay?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to World Heritage Day at the beautiful NGMA, brought to us by the one and only Priya Chetty Rajgopal. Priya Chetty Rajgopal is among Bengaluru's most passionate and effective champions of urban heritage. As the founder of Heritage Beku, she has transformed concern into collective action building a vibrant, citizen-led movement that celebrates and safeguards the city's cultural and ecological identity. From thoroughly reviving the Cubbon Park bandstand with engaging Sunday programs to consistently advocating for the protection of Bengaluru's historic spaces, her work has brought heritage into the public imagination in a meaningful and accessible way. Priya's efforts go beyond preservation. They inspire pride, participation, and a renewed sense of ownership among citizens. Today's World Heritage Day program at NGMA is a testament to her vision, her energy, and her ability to bring together people and purpose with such elegance. Let's hear it for Priya. And now, our headliner of the evening is Pavitra Mudayya, who needs very little introduction. Pavitra, will you join me on stage? Oh, there you are. Could we have the lights on? I have a short introduction on Pavitra. It is a privilege to be in conversation today with a woman who doesn't just study heritage, she lives it. Pavitra Mudayya is the driving force behind Vimor, an institution that has spent over 5 decades documenting, reviving, and breathing new life into the forgotten textiles of India. Since 1974, Pavitra has been at the forefront of textile conservation, working directly with weaving clusters to ensure that the intricate language of the loom is not lost to time. Her work with Karnataka's heritage weaves is legendary. She has a rare ability to look at a centuries-old fragment and reconstruct the technique, the story, and the spirit behind it. Please join me in welcoming the guardian of our looms, Pavitra Mudayya. So Pavitra, it's always very exciting to be in conversation with you, and we always learn something every time we interact with you. Today we have 10 young models who volunteered to showcase the garments, the textiles that Pavitra has woven over many decades actually. Will you tell us something about what we're going to see, Pavitra?
Thanks, Prasad. As always, you're always so supportive of pushing me forward. And thank you, Priya, for having this great event. Today what we are going to look at is about Karnataka textiles. I'm not going to talk about the regular textiles like the Molkalmaru, the Ilkal, but there are so many hidden gems in every part of Karnataka that we never seem to say, okay, this is from Karnataka. And it upsets me being a Kannadiga, being from here, that we're not able to take that pride. But also because most of this kind of information comes from oral stories. And over the years, we've been able to sort of ask people, check it out, how could we create it, how could it impact livelihood? Because recreating and doing a design is the simplest thing, but will it impact somebody's life, the weaver, who's actually the person, I think, who really values and has, I mean, we owe all our textiles to the weaving community. So today, we are going to focus on Karnataka textiles and a lot on Bangalore textiles, because before industrialization, there was a huge sector weaving textiles in Bangalore, like what we know. Now we know the IT city or the garden city, but it is one of the oldest places we have in South India, because in the South we always refer to Kanchipuram, but we never refer to Karnataka, so hopefully we'll be able to show you that.
Thank you, Pavitra. Is the volume loud enough? Can you all hear clearly? Okay. So, Ram, may we have the first models on, please? Pavitra, you get started.
All of you are very committed to Karnataka and chadran chikki. Okay, that's called a chadran chikki. Everyone knows the culture. And this is from the same region. And the study checks is what makes it very special. Very, very few people are left with it. And the pallu has storytelling on it. That is the speciality of that region. And of course, the region has got a GI.
Pavitra, it's a good time to ask you my first question. The genetic code of the loom. Every region has its own textile DNA. In your decades of research, which is the one defining characteristic or motive that makes a Karnataka heritage weave instantly recognizable compared to its neighbors in Andhra or Tamil Nadu?
Between the southern states, and there was migration, intermarriages, and so techniques really were very fluid and went in through all these kind of areas. But I think if I have to tell you about one thing that is very marked is all Karnataka textiles had checks, all kinds of checks. I'm going to tell you an interesting story about white checks. Okay, when a weaver weaves a check, he doesn't hold a tape or an inch tape to figure out what is the size of the check that I'm doing. Can you guess how he measured checks? Anyone? No. It is by the condiments in the kitchen. And that is fascinating, you know, because it's actually a brilliant idea. So you knew what a tamarind seed was, what was a cuscus seed, what was a coriander seed.
about the two saris the girls are wearing?
Yeah. So, again, the checked red one is something to talk about. I'm very proud of. Kamala Devi is very much wearing that sari in almost all her photographs. She is someone who I had a very, very close association with. I was a young girl. She was quite tough. And why that's why aren't you doing that? And we had to keep each sari and show it to her. But this has been for 45 years. We brought borders, we didn't know what name to call it. Just when Kamala Devi bought it, it was 20. So we did it in
Thank you, girls. My second question to you, Pavitra. The evolution of Vimor. Your mother, Chimi Nanjappa, started Vimor to help weavers. How has the mission shifted from simple revival to sustainable survival in the context of Karnataka's current textile landscape? craftsmen and weavers enough. And in Japan, they declare them national treasures. The government gives them very good incomes, guarantees them money for all their projects. And in India, we treat them like, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm sure we're all guilty of it, bargaining with artisans. Always trying to get it for a lower price. It's something we just must not do. And I think over the years, I'm happy to say that in the last 20 years, people like Pavitra and Martan Singh, Popul Jekar, Kamla Devi, who took a sort of a sunset industry during independence, because the British had left us with practically nothing. They didn't want us to use our own textiles. They took a thriving industry and killed it just to make bigger markets for their own machine-made fabrics, because they had invented the loom about 250 years ago, and they wanted the world to wear machine-made fabric. So they saw handmade fabrics as such a threat, and they actually killed the process. And I think in many ways, Indian women are the ones who saved it by constantly wearing the sari. I'm sure all of you have your ancestors' pictures at home, parents, grandparents, our fathers wearing the finest wool clothing from Manchester, but our mothers always in a beautiful sari. So a big tribute to Indian women, a big shout out to them for having helped save this wonderful, art. Look at that masterpiece there is over there, my God.
This is a masterpiece, and all of you will feel proud. This is from, I called it the cover at the back of everything else today. So, years ago when I
socio-cultural fabric, textiles were rarely about just fashion. They were about identity. How did traditional Karnataka weaves like the Ilkal or the Murkal reflect the specific social hierarchies or rituals of the communities who wore them?
like in Andhra and Kanjivaram. It was always smaller because it was just enough to cover. That was it. And of course, climate dictates, certain colors also dictate. So for different events, you have different colors. So I think the colors were just brilliant because I think in India, and that's why this is every sort of certain god. Like you have the Navagraha. Navagraha is the 9 planetary system. Each god has a special color, special hue, a special name. So I think every kindly done. You didn't have to put a fall at all. You know, so this actually talks across the countries. It's not that only we have. What it is, this shawl is done in a place called beyond Bangalore.
Pavitra, question about lost pigments. Karnataka has a rich history of natural dye. Which specific indigenous plant-based dyes or mineral colors from our region are you most concerned about losing or preserving? And can they truly be scaled for modern couture and fashion?
That's a very difficult question. I mean, I know about but if I was upset about something, my shoe is well for indigo. Know the why of, like the checks in the corner, it always had cotton with it. In all the 53, 55 years I've asked every weaver, nobody is able to answer me for why. So that is
temple connection. Thank you, boys. Many of our ancient designs were born in the shadows of the Hoysala and Vijayanagara temples. How much of our textile geometry is actually stone architecture translated into silk and cotton?
Difficult question. Inspiration, and you think, oh wow, this can be translated into a print or very possible. I mean, maybe both ways have worked generation from using it. And I think that is what it is. We've not said that this is IP, don't use it from this temple, don't take it from there. So it's open to every Indian, and I can reinterpret, I can take it, do anything with it. And everything in what we see as so-called design has a little story that belongs to the local area and the language. I think when we all love stories, and when we are told a story about a certain area and a certain thing, it makes a lot of difference to us. But I think they were brilliant artists.
We're just going to show you the model saris on a solo level. The youth narrative. We often talk about heritage in the past sense. How do we make a young designer in Bengaluru see a Patida Anchu sari not as an heirloom for the cupboard, but as a modern, radical expression of identity?
Across.
I think if everyone just bought one piece of handloom every year, it could turn the fortunes of the weavers around completely. The government is so well-meaning. By the way, do all of you all know the difference between khadi and handloom? So, khadi is when you spin by the charka, when the thread is spun on the charka and then taken to a handloom and woven. It's khadi. So both the processes are handmade. But the great saris of India are done with machine-made thread, but hand-woven. So that's the differentiation. We call khadi, khadi, and handloom because, and that is the difference between the two. And I think that the government in its well-meaning way, the khadi bhandars and 40% discounts and 70% discounts do nothing to help the industry. And unfortunately, many of us buy at that time because it makes economic sense. You can't fault anyone for buying it at discount. But we need to stop that process. I don't see why it should be devalued at any point in its life. You know, it can really be sold at the full price at any time. I mean, you go to a Louis Vuitton store and spend 5 lakhs on buying a bag that's been made in a factory. Where is the importance of the hand, of the handmade goods that really, to me, defines true luxury? If it's not made by hand, how can it be luxury? If you can make it in the thousands of pieces in factories in China and factories in wherever, and then you ship it all back to Paris or to Rome, and then you're allowed to put that made in Italy tag on it just because the zipper's been fastened in that country, or because the last buttons have been sewn on in that country. Even our beautiful embroidery, labels like Chanel and Dior and everyone else, I mean, they use our embroidery. The panels are embroidered in India. They're cut over here. Then they're taken there and the label is put on and it's made in Paris and made in London or made wherever the high-value nations are located, because that's how people buy. That when you see some leather goods made in Italy, it has much more value than a high-design piece or a Fab India piece. Yesterday I went to Fab India. It was the 30th anniversary in India. And such beautiful products in the store. And people buying, of course. I mean, I know that over here I'm preaching to the converted. But we really need to support the process of handwoven and of khadi, of the embroidery, the processes like leheria and bandhani and the dyeing techniques of India, because it is something that is so unique. We are the last country in the world to have this treasury of design, of handwoven textiles, of heritage weaves, and I somehow feel that we still don't market it properly. Of course, the Sabyasachis and the Rahul Mishras do go abroad, but in such tiny quantities, it makes no difference to the narrative at all. We really need to start being proud of what we produce, wearing it with pride, and shipping it out with pride, to be able to take Indian textiles, Indian techniques, but to create a global product with it. In black, white, and grey if they must, but we have to continue it.
Okay, just one last word when he's talking of this discount. So in such a large country like ours, it's not possible to educate everyone on what is handloom, what is powerloom, what is khadi, and what is not. So I think responsibility is for each one of us, but also at a policy level, I do not know for 70 years why we continue with this discount process. The discount is absolutely, it doesn't help the weaver, and it's not that the wearer needs it. But the point is the weaver to recover that discount, they say 20%. 20% comes to him after 1 year. He has to take a loan to pay his weavers, and he's paying the interest. So no one calculates all these kind of things, and at this point of time, however well-intentioned it is, I think creating a discount and a subsidy culture is what is killing our industry. Because half of them do not know how many times to leave their weaving and go to an office to sign. So these are kind of things that really have been pulling our sector down so much.
I'd like to get the models on, please. They'd like to show you the textiles and movement, how beautiful they look. Please start that. The Kurd sari, since Pavitra and I are both from Kurd, so we always insist on having one place that's the Kurbati Podiya. It's actually designed for working in the field, so that the trees didn't get in the way and women could pick paddy or pick coffee or whatever wearing that style. The mosquito net dhoti. It's really quite amazing. And such a lightness of feel also. Can the models re-enter? Welcome back the models. Ladies and gentlemen, Pavitra and Mudayya. Priya, will you join us on World Heritage Day? Thank you, Priya, for putting this together. I feel less guilty about not participating enough. A big hand for Priya and Pavitra, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, models. You were lovely. Thank you for showing us the beauty of this art. And promise us that all of you are always in your lives. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being such a lovely audience. Do we have a Q&A? Would anyone like to ask a question? Put the lights on. Any questions for anyone?
Otherwise, he never gets to experiment at somebody else's cost. He doesn't have the money to put his own loom and set it up. So I always say, if it's a community, it's 2 pieces, otherwise the last. if it didn't sell, what happens at the most? My mother wore it or I wore it. Simple solution. And because it's a small production, I don't think I have looked at that kind of scale, but today there must be some truth in it. As I said, 70% of my weavers are so big, and they don't entertain the single kind of customer. It's wholesale, and their sons have done MBA engineering. We don't expect them to sit on the loom. That's another thing that worries me. Why is the weaver son expected to sit on the loom? He has grown up with that, so he understands every process. He's done MBA engineering, and he's moved on like every other person's child is aspirational and moved on. So I think they have technology in their hand, and they have the inherent skills that they know what needs to be done. All that they need from what I would say is design sensibility, because you'd never understand what the rural person wants and what an urban person wants. So I had a weaver, like, he'd put a hideous blue in every design, and for the longest time I couldn't understand why. Then I realized in the village all those blue doors are blue. All the doors are blue, so naturally in his head he's got it. I think we also have to step back and be cautious and respectful, and it has worked with me, though I'm very small, but it's simple. I don't think we need to create design which is very investment intensive. Simple things that don't need too much of investments with what he has. I mean, I think if design ability is there, you can do it with the basics. You don't need to say invest in this, invest in that, and that has always worked. I always say till you stabilize, do it simply. Then when he grows, he will be able to not only do a jacquard, he will get a hydraulic jacquard. But that is his journey, and it's great. And I've seen it like that, because you can't keep waiting when investment will come, who's going to put in money, what it is. See, I think also today you look at success and sale and marketing in a very, very big way. But handloom is a slow production. If you can absorb it at a regular thing, and it allows you to change design. In no other sector, if you're doing it, you do 100 pieces, and that is a problem, I think, with today's industry. You're ordering 100 pieces, so you're creating that monotony. And he doesn't become a creator at all. He's just blindly closing an eyes and executing that. So you've taken away the power of creating, and I don't think nobody's gaining in that way except the big buyer, and it's a bargainable good. So I think if we look at small, which handloom fits in, I think there shouldn't be a problem, if I'm okay to, sorry.
And I think really the sector has nothing against the power loom. The power loom also weaves the famous Mysore silk sari is power loomed. The Maharaja imported these machines, the looms, about 100 years ago. And the KSIC's famous Mysore silk sari is a power loomed sari with its ganda berundas and with everything going in it. And, you know, the world has enough space for both. The power loom is there for, you know, military uniforms, air hostesses, uniforms, whatever kind of work that we need, it has to be power loomed. I'm saying let's keep this as the tip of luxury, the slow process of handmade, handmade luxury. It's really a very small part of the market, but we should be willing to pay as much for a beautiful Mulkalmuru sari as we are for a Louis Vuitton bag.
But
LV never has a sale.
But Mulkalmuru, the problem in anything in Karnataka, it's never marketed and never told that it's from Mulkalmuru. They'll sell it as a Kanchipattu, and that is the problem. So the loss is ours. They put in that much effort, that much work, great, everything else, but at such a ridiculously low cost. And everywhere we just put it under Kanjivaram because we are not being able to promote it from our state and our hands. Another thing I have a problem with power loom is the GI. So all these have GI tags. But when you have a GI, I don't think you should allow power loom because it's absolute competition. So where is it? It comes down to policy. Sorry to say, it comes down to policy. If policy allows this and that, okay, power loom, do bed sheets, do anything else. But what happens is with power loom, you can't compete with a handloom. Then don't put a GI. Let that die on its own. If a power loom thing can do a kasuti embroidery and a nilkal sari, tomorrow the handloom man cannot compete. If you are interested in his livelihood and supporting and growing the culture, I think you need to take a very strong stand that any of these products, no. Like in Chanderi, they don't allow a power loom. Certain weaving communities do not allow. Yeah, Maheshwari, they don't. It is, so again, it's about raising the community coming together. How many of them are literate and able to say, I don't care, I will lose a sale, but I will not allow a power loom to come in. It's a very difficult thing because ultimately you need to put food on his plate. You know?
Any questions? There's one there.
How do you differentiate between a power loom product versus
No, we've got tags also, but I don't think that is the solution because like every solution you can find a way of bypassing it. Earlier the older systems we'd know a hand loom because there were marks and things. But technology grows so fast that it's impossible to keep in touch with anything, you know. I mean, you just have to trust where you are buying it. Like he says, Mysore silk. You go to the authentic place, you know you're not going to be cheated. Also, how much of us as consumers are going to invest in this kind of knowledge and education? We are not. It's impulsive. I like it. I want it. And this is the day of instant gratification. This is what I will wear. I want it. Can go into the landfill after 1 month or 2 months. It's okay. We don't have that responsibility. If we did, I'd buy fewer clothes with this. The thing in the power loom is, you know, when you hold it, it just crushes and then it opens out. It doesn't, in a cotton you see the crush marks, you will never see it in a power loom if it's got polyester. And the worst about polyester, power loom also okay, but the worst of it is they put a polyester into the power loom because it's ease of doing. All the polyester comes from Surat and now the GST has been reduced in that. So what does the weaver really do? So how is he to compete? All the power looms that were in Chickpet have closed because they can't compete with the Surat products. So I don't know, I think our policy makers also should be a little more tuned to all this. You know, you're not talking of what is the output, you have to talk of how many people are leaving this industry.
Mine's the cheating way of doing it, but I always feel that when you look at handloom, the line is never very straight. In a power loom, it's like you've drawn it with a ruler. It's so straight. But in handloom, the line will always be a little wavery, depending on the mood the weaver is on that day. If he's angry, you'll get a tighter weave. If he's in a good mood, you'll get a slightly looser weave. But like even the one that Pavitra is wearing, you can see that the lines are not razor sharp. So that's one good rule of thumb to use to ensure that there is a waver in the line.
Also knots, you know, threads are broken and
joined
back again. So you will see it will never be an equal weave at all. If it is what you think is a defect, is actually a mark of a handloom. Another interesting thing is handloom, when a thread breaks, they join it. And why do you think they join it and continue? Because it's about putting together thread like in your life. When you break things, you put them together and then move on. That is the philosophy. That's why we've got all the philosophers who belong to weaving community from Kabir to Dasamaya and the Kural. Yeah.
To celebrate the broken thread. We celebrate Japanese broken ceramic, and it's okay, right? When you put gold and mend it and you add the value to it. We don't tell enough stories, we don't build the reputation of the hand-woven, the handmade. But it's changing. I mean, I think that today I can proudly say that handloom and khadi have actually become India's #1 FMCG product. It's selling in such good quantities. But like Pavitra says, you can never be quite sure whether what you're buying is real or fake. So buyer beware, really.
Sorry. Should I go ahead? Yeah. Okay. I'm here. Pavitra. Hi. Hi, Priya. Thank you, first of all of you, for putting this amazing experience together. It was very enriching. Pavitra, would you want to tell us a little bit about age of handloom and understanding the whole idea of reuse, repair, and the fact that handloom also becomes sort of inheritance and the wear and tear in terms of a life cycle of a textile vis-a-vis the times we are in, where fast fashion is a big thing.
Okay, so as I think everyone has an attachment to cloth. The day you are born, the first swaddle cloth is cloth. The day you die, it's cloth. So your entire life, you've got an association and an emotional attachment to cloth. Cloth in the earlier times is always handloom and never powerloom. So
And
I
always
think,
khadi. Because
everyone has an attachment to cloth because it has wrapped up a kind of memory in every person's life, not only in our country, across the world. That is why we have an association, and it's not easy to part with a sari or anything that belongs to your grandmother. How do we reuse it? In handlooms, it's always been about reuse. See, a sari is, even when it's torn, what do you use it for? You make the hammocks and to put a baby there in the crib. So have you realized in India we never have crib deaths, like in other parts of the world? Because the baby is in that hammock with the mother's or grandmother's old sari. She feels the warmth, feels that security. It's made into nappies, it's made into clothes, it's made into quilts, it's made into... There is no end use to it at all. And when the sari is coming apart, they even pull out the threads and use it for embroidery. In certain parts, it's inauspicious to keep a torn sari, and I was horrified when I first knew this, that old saris, they donated to the temple to make the wicks, the lanterns around the jatra, the torches. So everybody's old sari goes to make those torches. So there's nothing wasted. And I think this was much before the world is talking about reuse, repurpose, do this. I think India as a society has never wasted anything. Because one is, like the weaver thinks he's been gifted, it's a gift. God has given him this thing, so he will put his 100% and do it. And there was no question that your mind was not creative enough how to find uses. We did. Every house has a quilt. Every house has something, and it's folded and kept across and given to the next generation with a little story. I think that is very much part of our culture, you know.
And to answer the second part of your question, I would put a conservative estimate at about 3,000 years of weaving in India, because I think India was exporting textile to so much of the world for 3,000 years. I mean, if you research Roman history, or you even watch a film like The Gladiator, you know, those women are wearing those beautiful scarves, they called fistulas, I think they are known as. They are usually Indian brocades, very beautiful hand-woven brocades that were exported in those days. And of course, everyone wore khadi in the old days because there were no power looms to either make thread or to weave the cloth. So technically, the whole world wore khadi at one point. But also the importance of khadi is because of the hand technique, the spirituality with which it's invested. They say that to be a successful charkha spinner, you have to be in a state of elevated kind of nirvana, really. And that is what makes the thread very fine. And you can draw the line and make it all even and not thick and thin like we would be doing if we were sitting on the charkha. So every piece of khadi has such a spirituality spun into it. The concentration of the human mind, the effort of the human hand. And I think that it keeps that spirituality till the end of its life. I think that's one of the most important things about handwoven and khadi for me. So on that note, shall we, one more there?
If there's time, a very small question. I was just drawing upon what you said about the branding and the aspirational brands that we pay so much more for, like a Louis Vuitton or anything made in Paris, made in Italy. And I think it was really reminiscent of a time when structured thinking or the power loom or manufacturing, the whole industrial era, and obviously the West capturing our imagination. And now we're in a time very post-industrial. We're dealing with planetary, climate change, all of those boundaries. And all of these processes that, Pavitra ji and all of you talked about are really so carbon light. There's carbon credits going on. And in some way, this is becoming more aspirational for us, like being more fluid, being lighter with our lifestyles. And in some way, the focus can shift back to India. So just curious, there's a lot of psychology in being aspirational. So how do we make these things aspirational? not just to us as Indians, but to the world.
I think we'll have to appoint Neeta Ambani to become the brand ambassador because she
Oh
seems
my
to have the highest number of eyeballs in the world. But the government has also copyrighted the word khadi. So none of these designers are allowed to use the word khadi anymore. Khadi has become exclusive property of KVIC. So now we are all looking for different terminology to call khadi khadi. Not very fair, but it has become a very large selling export item also. People are importing a large amount of khadi and handwovens into different countries for different usages, designers, industry, lots of people. So I hope that we will be able to brand it properly, but India has arrived in many ways, and I feel that maybe this could then become the next wave, because it's always the hard thrust first and then soft power comes later. And I think that the world is beginning to wake up to the idea of Indian handmade beauty. And a lot of people are using it. A lot of the designers in the West are using it. We call it cultural appropriation, but go ahead, take it if you can make something out of it. Why not? I mean, a Kolhapuri chappal that we pay 500 rupees for is now selling for $2,500. So be a little careful the next time you buy a Kolhapuri. Make sure it's not a Prada. So, is there anyone from Heritage Beku you'd like to invite on stage for a quick picture? Anil, will you join us on stage? I'd like my team to come. Anil was the one who helped drape the girls' beautiful drapes today. Ari, Rana, please join us on stage. I'd love to have a group picture with all of you all. Come, Anil. This is Anil Hosmani, who also promotes Ilkal fabric under his own label and comes and helps us with draping. This is Rana, who put the show together today and choreographed the models. Where are Vinita and Ram? And where are the Vimor team? I didn't see them coming on. Can I have them on stage? Where's the Vimor team, Pavitra? Any one of your boys are here?
Nagaraj and Prakash.
This is Ari Dabas, who runs our organization. And Bunny. Prakash is here. Ramji, where are you? Have Ramji and Radha left?
No, he left, I think. And that's
Bunny.
Nagaraj.
Bunny Madidali. And here's the money shot. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. It really means a lot to us that you'll turn up on a Saturday afternoon when you could be at the multiplex watching the latest Durandar. Thank you. Yeah.
Just say a big thank you for all of you to be here and to continue to celebrate World Heritage Day. But a special thanks to very generous panelists, and to Prasad and to Pavitra and the team of models and Prasad's team, of course, for just doing this at short notice. And I cannot tell you, and I'm sure that you feel the same way, I've been sitting in the audience and listening to some magic unfold. The things that we think we know, but we don't. And the sometimes the sadness and the joy and the robustness, the passion of the stories that Pavitra shared. The structure that Prasad brought in, and the sheer beauty that the models demonstrated in just wearing this and reminding us that that is our tradition, that is our heritage. So, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Prasad and for Pavitra and their team, and for Prasad being such a core driver of Heritage Beku. I can tell you that I just said this about a week ago. I said, I'm thinking of doing this. And he said, you know what? Do it. I'll support you. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think we'd be able to do this. So big round of applause, and thank you very much for being a great audience. Prasad, thank you. Thank you, models. So kind. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you marked the day. Have a happy Heritage Day for the rest of the day anyway. Thank you.